welcome to my live palmistry Q&A. Today we're coming a little bit later because I had some maintenance, important, urgent maintenance in the house. So I was a little bit busy this morning. But I'm here to answer your palmistry questions or any related questions. I'll just turn this volume down here. Got the volume up on my laptop. So welcome viewers, welcome to say hi, welcome to ask me anything about the palm lines. Today I'm going to talk about all of the palm lines, or well, not all of them, but I will name all the various palm lines so that if you are a beginner, especially to palmistry, it might help you get an understanding as to what all the lines are called, even though some people have different names for the palm lines, but that doesn't matter. Once you get to learn the palm lines, you get to see that the name doesn't matter. It's more about the meaning of the line that matters. So because palmistry is so old, it goes back to ancient times, that the way that people read the palms a long time ago is slightly different to modern palmistry. So I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I said I'm a palm reader, and they said that's a load of rubbish. Anybody who's older than the age of 7 knows that it's just a load of bollocks. And I just thought, well, okay, they're obviously not educated on modern palmistry, so I do understand how people see it as something that's hocus pocus, superstitious, or just, you know, old-fashioned wives' tales. But that's how people have been led to believe, people who are not aware. So I'm not calling them ignorant, but because they don't know much about it. Hello Damien, welcome. Thank you for saying hi. If you're watching, you're welcome to say hi. I'm here for a chat. This is why we go live. If we don't have any chatting, I will bring up my picture and we will do some discussions about the minor lines that I have got here. But yeah, I just want to, the reason why I do this is so many people do not understand what palmistry is. Even when I say the word palmistry, they go, what's that? And then I say it's reading the hands, not just the palm lines, but reading the hands. So then they just go, so they've already closed their mind to the subject of palmistry. Whereas I think people should be a little bit more open-minded about it, and they're not going to be open-minded about it until somebody explains to them why palmistry is actually real. Well, modern palmistry is real. So the way I explain it to those people who do not believe is simple things. Here's your mind. See, my hands are moving. Everything I'm thinking, I'm not saying hand move and then the hand moves. It's automatic. So all this stuff going on with my hands is automatic. I'm talking, I'm saying stuff, and my hands could be doing anything at all. Whatever my brain is saying in the back of my mind, my brain is telling my hands to do this stuff. And nobody's watching or seeing or hearing all the nerve action that's actually happening in my body. Everything you do with your hands starts up here. Unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever the word is, it's happening. I got an itch. Oh, my brain knows I have to scratch that itch. Hello, hand. They are wonderful. I love hands. They're so responsive. There's more nerves connected to your hands from your brain than any other body part. So this is why if your brain is constantly worried, if you're constantly stressed, if you're under long-term worry, your hands will begin to show all of those things. And the more lines you have, it's potentially the more worry you have been going through. The more sensitive is your nature, your personality. So somebody with a tough nature who doesn't care about what people say, who doesn't care about getting emotionally attached, somebody who knows what they want, somebody who goes after what they want and they follow their dreams and they're kind of oblivious to everything else around them. Maybe they might be in tune with nature, that's about it. Those kind of people will only have a few lines. They'll have a lifeline, a heart line and a headline. And those people are usually tough people, and they're the ones that are hard to convince that palmistry is actually real. So I imagine when somebody is skeptical, I'm already imagining what their hand looks like. First of all, they will probably only have a few lines. Secondly, they probably have big knuckles, because that's a sign also of a skeptic. Somebody who likes to think things through and analyze things through. So they're going to have visible knuckles. So there's other signs that might describe someone who's going to be skeptical, but the main one is the lack of lines. So so basically what I'm saying is I'm trying to convince people how the lines affect the mind. I've got a video that I'm going to be doing, and that's based on a lady's hand who has a lot of lines all over it, and they never used to be that way, but she had she went through years of like mental issues and like depression and bipolar and all sorts of things, and she was getting treatment for it. So her mind was being affected by her thoughts and the medication and the treatment, and it was showing on her hands, and there was more and more and more lines building on her hands. So there's a perfect example how the mind connects to the lines. So you're welcome to ask questions. I'm going to bring up a picture of a hand so that I can draw lines on it. I'll see which one might suit. Yeah, looks like this one will be okay. And I'll start drawing some lines, and if anybody wants to ask me any questions, please do so. You're welcome to say hi. Let me know where you are from. What time is it mainly? What time is it where you are? Because I'm on today a lot later. I normally go on at Australian time, 9 o'clock in the morning here. Today I couldn't go on until 12 p.m. Australian time. So I don't know what time it is over there where you guys are. So you're welcome to let me know. Is this a good time to do a live, or are you supposed to be in bed? Please let me know. So in the meantime, while you're thinking up questions that you might want to ask me, I'm going to start describing some of these lines. I'll make sure I've got a pen. Let's go blue. Let's see if blue works. Okay. So the main line, I'll just draw the main lines in blue just so we know and what to relate to. one of the main lines is the lifeline, which is the one that wraps around the ball of thumb. That describes our character, doesn't describe our length of life. It describes our quality and of life and our personality. Are we quiet type? Are we like to be the center of attention? Are we down to earth? Do we like traveling? Do we have a nervous nature? That kind of thing. Then there's the headline, which describes what kind of a mind we have. And the heart line describes our emotions. How do we deal with our emotions? Are we emotional or are we cold? Do we have feelings a lot, or do we ignore our feelings? That kind of thing. So there's your main 3 lines. So I'm going to swap to a color and maybe make a smaller pen. Thanks for commenting, Damien. You said, I've noticed people with darker skin tend to have deep and strong lines. Is that something you noticed? Yes, I have. Yes, it's to do with the pigment, obviously. People with darker skin usually also have thicker skin. So I rarely see someone who have darker skin to have very fine, delicate skin. So it is their constitution. They have a more robust constitution. And the deeper, stronger lines not only depict that, their like strength of health and character, but it also depicts that they are kind of focused. More, the deeper, stronger the lines, the more focused they are. So usually it's the main lines that are deep, and so they are born set in their ways. They might be very traditional, so that traditional people have the lifeline that reaches all the way to the bottom of the palm towards the wrist. And the deeper the line, the more steady the life. And the more likely that is going to happen is someone with thicker skin. So the skin is important in palm reading, not the color of the skin, but the thickness. So when you feel someone's hand, you can tell if it's silky smooth or if it's slightly rough. Does it feel like paper? Does it feel like sandpaper, or does it feel like silk? And the finer the skin, the lighter and weaker the lines. So the tougher the skin, the more tougher the person. Someone with, there's a saying goes, if someone is thick-skinned or if they're thin-skinned. If they're thin-skinned, they have a short temper, they're sensitive, they can't handle much stress. If somebody they're very thick-skinned, it means that they're tough, they're robust, they can handle a few insults thrown at them, you know, they're quite sort of able to withstand a lot of stress. So I've definitely have noticed that the darker skin, they just tend to inherit this more strength in their quality of the skin. It could be to do with the melanin, because for instance, myself, I'm European and I have very thin skin on my face, and it goes red really quickly because it's thin, and I get sunburnt really, really quickly because I have thin skin, so it sunburns. But somebody who has a lot of melanin with darker skin, they're not likely to get sunburnt. Their skin has this natural protection, and their skin is thicker with more melanin, a natural protection. The same goes on their palms. They have a more natural protection. So they can handle the outdoors a lot more than someone like me, that's for sure. But that's an interesting point to bring up, that's for sure. We've got 4 or 5 viewers online. We've got Facebook going on. We've got YouTube going on. So I shall change color on this drawing, and we shall talk about these minor lines. Let's see if we can come up with a line that you don't know about. I've actually got an interesting one. I've got an interesting line which is quite rare, and I'll see if this red color works. First of all, it's called an intuition line, which is rare because it curves all the way around the Mount of Moon. So that line is actually, in some people, only partial. On some people, that line is just a section. So even if you have a curve like that, it's still a partial intuition line. You'll be very lucky to have the full line. Sometimes there's a mix of lines because the health line, the health line or the line of Mercury runs towards the pinky, and it runs along this same line. So it's very easy to mix the line of Mercury with the intuition line. So in this drawing I have here, there is a partial intuition line and the Mercury line. The only reason I know that's a Mercury line because it rises up towards the pinky. So if it were to curve away from there, then that's the intuition line. Joining, the intuition line can sometimes join the health line and then leave the health line, much like the lifeline can join the fate line. So the fate line is a line that normally runs towards the middle finger, and that can clash with the lifeline. Sometimes they run alongside the same path for a little while. And that's common in people who have, at a certain time in their life, decided to focus more on their career, or that they made a big change in their life. So when the lifeline clashes with the fate line, bit over the halfway, this points to around the age just over 40, so anywhere between 40 and 45. So that would show somebody who is actually making a conscious effort to change their life or change their career or be more focused on their career. So I see that quite a lot. And you're welcome for the explanation. So let's add some more minor lines here. So we've drawn a partial intuition line. We've got the Mercury line or the health line. We've got the fate line. Another common line is the line of Apollo, or called the success line. So that line is usually quite short. If it is much longer than that, that would show someone who is likely to be successful at an early age in their life. If it's shorter, if it doesn't start until the top blue line, that usually represents someone more successful after they're in their 50s. So, hi Tony, welcome. Welcome, welcome. What time is it over there? I know it's unless you're in Australia, it's lunchtime here. It's middle of the day. So if you're on the other side of the world, it's probably totally different time. It's hard for me to get match with everybody's time zones. New Zealand. Oh, what's the time in New Zealand now? I don't know. They're like 3 hours difference, I think, or a bit more. Thanks for joining today. $2:30 p.m. Oh, that's not too bad. That's only like 2 hours. That's only 2 hours difference. First time watching me. Yay, well, well, welcome. Yeah, I'm later today. I normally go 9 a.m., which in your time, I suppose, would be 11 or so. Yeah, so today was later because of some plumbers had to come and fix pipes. And it was very noisy right outside this window and I couldn't do it. And they needed information from me, so I had to be there. So we'll see how we go with the 12 o'clock slot. I might start doing more 12 o'clock slots as well. So we were talking about all the minor lines on the palm. I'll change color again. We are going to talk about some little lines that turn up on the palms and ones that might get a little bit more confusing for people. First of all, often there's lines under the pinky. These are traditionally called medical stigmata or healing lines, healer's lines, but it doesn't mean that you are some magical healer just because you have these lines, but they do represent communication ability and a way to communicate with people in a tactful way, in a way that might help people. So nurses, doctors, good friends, like not a lot of people will have these lines. If there's lots and lots of them, you more than likely communicate quite a bit. So there might be somebody like me who's always communicating with people on the internet or wherever. So if there's more lines beside the success line and the fate line, that's normal too, because that just gives multiple lines. There can be multiple success lines and multiple fate lines. They are common in those who run a business, for example, because business people, they might be doing ordering the stock, they might be, doing deliveries, they might be doing the phones, they might be doing the books. There's multiple things that a business owner has to do himself. So that's why often there are more than one line for entrepreneurs or business people. Also, people who have a creative hobby, for instance, somebody who may have a job, but they also have a sideline. They may sell their little handmade things on the side while they're working. So that can make a second line. Another time when there can be a second line is, say, if the person is studying while they're working, or they have two careers at the same time. So somebody who takes up a long-term study, it's likely to show up as two lines. And another time they can be two lines is when, say, the person gets married. So the person might have a supportive partner So if this person was to marry at age, say, 34, this line might appear here as a supporting person in their life, supporting anything from financially to emotionally. And say if the marriage happened around that age, 33, 34, there would likely to be a marriage line approximately halfway on that side mount. So you're looking at the line of the pinky and the heart line. So if there's a line about halfway on the side underneath, that might represent that marriage that occurs around the age 33 mark. So we always look at other parts of the hand to see what's going on. So in the lifeline, you might see a little change around 33. So 33 on the lifeline would be about here. There might be like a little branch that sticks out, and that will represent some energy that's leaving towards another change in the life. So most branch lines can represent decisions, change, or travel if it's off the lifeline. So if you don't know what I mean by branch line, branch is like, look at it like a tree. So if there's a little branch sticking out of the main line. So you might have a branch sticking out inward. That would mean an inward change. That could not such a positive influence as if it was going to on the outside of the lifeline. It's slightly different. So welcome to ask questions while I'm talking away here. I think I've got a couple of people on Facebook watching as well. On YouTube, looks like it. I'll refresh that page. You're welcome to tell me where you're from. Have you been studying palmistry for very long? If you're new to palmistry, I often get my colleagues from the internet joining me. It's nice when they do. They can help in the conversation. So let's talk more about some of these small lines. Now, under the fingers, we often get some lines. There's one that's talked about a lot, is called the Ring of Solomon. So that can be easily mistaken for a stress line or a sympathy line. So I've found out that if this line is in its perfect form like I've drawn it, that's the Ring of Solomon. And that represents somebody who's quite intuitive and in touch with their feelings in a way that they can sense if somebody's no good. They're very selfless, so it's blocking the energy from Jupiter. Jupiter is about yourself and your ego and your self-esteem. So if somebody has the full Ring of Solomon, they care less about their own agenda and they care more about other people's agenda. Somebody, for instance, a mother who devotes their life to their children and doesn't follow her own career path because she's such a devoted mother, she might have a line like that. Somebody who's, for instance, a priest or a pastor, they might have a line like that because they're devoting themselves to other people. So There is another version of that. It's just a sympathy line, and usually it doesn't go all the way across. Now, the way to tell if it's a stress line is it's a little bit lower, and it tends to radiate towards the middle finger. And the further it goes towards the little finger, the more stress that shows. The kind of stress that can represent is anything from a traumatic experience through to something that the person was responsible, had great responsibility when they were young. For instance, a 10-year-old child who had to look after their 4-year-old sister or brother. That's a lot of responsibility put on a young person. Somebody who may be doing a lot around the house because their parents might not be available for one reason or another. So somebody with early responsibilities might have this line to the middle finger, because the middle finger represents responsibilities and things like that, but it also represents melancholy and sadness, and yeah, it can represent things not going quite right. So the stress lines usually represent from an early age. So it doesn't mean it's a future thing. It's showing what might have happened when the person was young. So the other line's quite rare is the girdle, not the girdle of Venus. I'm talking about the rings under the finger. So the line of Saturn under the middle finger, that blocks some of the energy of responsibilities. So somebody who's probably jumps from job to job, they probably don't have very good responsible nature, might have a ring of Saturn. Then there's the ring of Apollo, and that tends to block some creative or social factors. And the ring of Mercury, that is also called the what's it called when the person's single all their life? Now my brain's gone. My brain's totally lost it now. So they're not likely to marry. They're likely to spinster line. That was got it. Spinster line. It's also known Mercury line or spinster line. So that is quite close to where the marriage lines are. So that's another line that's difficult to analyze. You've got to make sure that it's not actually a marriage line, where it comes from the side of the middle of the mount instead of up the top. So that's the difference. Most lines are on the ball of thumb are stress lines, but they can also mean a lot of influence from the family, because this is known as the family ring on the thumb. That's known as the family ring. So many of the lines that radiate from there show family influence, but they can usually they just go across. So the person is either having a lot of stress in the family or that they have a lot of family influence. The way to know if it is an actual stress line is if it crosses right over. So once it reaches the lifeline, you know that that is an occurrence that at that time there was a lot of stress in the person's life and it's affected them. And in this case, it might have been something around the age of 40 because it's about the middle of the lifeline. So if these stress lines happen to reach even further and go to that headline, which is the lower blue line here, that can show mental stress. That's something that affected the mind. So it could have been anything from a traumatic experience to like going through emotions like depression or things like that, anger, all sorts of emotions. So if it goes even further to the heart line, that's likely to be issues and stress with relationships, proper feelings hurt. So those are typical usually on sensitive folk who are affected by their feelings a lot. So you can have people who have emotional stress and they're not going to have this line if they have tough skin. Those tough skin folk, they're difficult to read because not as much gets written on their hands because they're so coarse. So the more sensitive you are, the more likely a mark is going to show on your hand. So if that line continues even further and reaches all the way to the marriage line, well, you know that's a sign of trouble. A sign of trouble. It doesn't mean that, you know, there's definitely divorce happening, but there is some unhappiness in the relationship. That's for sure. Does anyone have any questions so far before I move on to the next line? You like my merch? This is the symbol. 2 lotus flowers and eye. And an eye for intuition. Good luck symbols. This is my new logo. And I have merch. Check out my merch store. I've got the link on this video. I've always got it in the description. Got all sorts of merchandise, clothing, household things. If you would like to support my channel, that would be awesome. I do this and it the YouTube, I get paid like $18 a month and that doesn't buy me food. I have to find ways to make more money. YouTube is not, I don't have millions and millions of followers. I'm not that famous. I have like 6,500 viewers and I only managed to get a handful to join my live streams. So it seems big, 6,500 people seems big, but it's actually not. When it talk about monetary value, it's quite small. But palmistry is hard to convince people to be interested in it. So the more people that I can convince into looking at their hand lines and seeing how they can see their personality and their life in their hands, the better. The more people I can convince, the better. So that's why I do it. So let's draw some more lines on this palm. So effort lines. Somebody who's trying to make an effort will, whether it's their job or their education or any other life, the effort lines rise from the lifeline. They're little lines like this. And people who study or do well in their careers often have little effort lines that rise from the lifeline. Damien's on another question. What does a branch from the heart line heading to the headline mean? Okay, that's quite common. So a branch from the heart line, depending on where it is, but often there's a branch from the heart line that heads towards the headline around about here. So that is the representing the emotions, sending energy to the mind, seeking information from the mind. So someone might be turning their emotional thoughts and rationalizing. So before you make an emotional decision, you asking your logic. It's like your heart is asking your brain for the answer. This is what I feel, but this is what I think. So you more than likely rationalize your emotional thoughts. If that line goes like towards the beginning of the lifeline, that's often an issue from childhood that prevents you from feeling emotions, or you still have a very strong family connection that may have affected your relationship with one of your parents. So it affects emotional change because of something from the childhood. But the normal lines that reach towards the headline represent, yes, rationalizing emotions. If they are just branches that droop in general along the heart line, they can be experiences that are like heartbreak or breakups. They can show negative emotional experiences if it doesn't quite reach the headline. So that can represent, say, if someone has broken up and they felt it emotionally hurt, they can show up as drooping lines towards the headline, so negative experiences. The opposite, if the lines are rising, so that shows positive experiences. So that might show happy times and enjoyable times emotionally when they're rising branches. So usually downward branches show more of a negative experience. Upward branches, positive experiences. Hope that makes sense. Now, where was I? I was talking about those achievement lines. That's right. I've got a whole article on my website, DestinyPalmistry.com. If you haven't been there, I do have an article there on how to see achievement from the hand. So there's other features where you can see future and past, present achievements. So it's quite an interesting article. I think I've got a search bar on my website. I'll have to double check. Make sure you can search for articles in there. Or go to the page that says the blog, my blog, in the menu. That's where all my articles go. I've got about over 200 articles on the website at the moment. Seems to be doing well. So there's other lines. The hand is getting covered in lines here. There's other lines that I wanted to talk about. There's the via lascivia that crosses over like that. That can also be called other things. It can have other names like escape line or a poison line or a line of addiction. So many people call it different things. Line of addiction, because it represents escaping. So whether the person is an artist, whether they like to escape from reality, or whether they like to travel, whether they like to get away from the normal stale life. For instance, I believe Michael Jackson had this line. So the via lascivia, lascivia means lavishness, somebody who might be very flirtatious, but also at the same time they could be somebody who takes medication for medication drugs. It could be someone who takes recreational drugs. It could be someone who just likes to go ski jumping, what do they call it? Skydiving. It could be somebody who's very artistic and they put their world into their artistic creations. And I do believe Michael Jackson was very creative with his music and dancing and everything that he was into. Plus, because of his life, he was very into escaping from reality in his life. So that's was an interesting line. Some people have that same line, but it's only kind of up here. That can represent, it's called the intensity line, or it can be called an allergy line. Some people with that line have allergies, some people don't. Some people, it represents their hyperactive system. So they're quite into everything. They're quite hyperactive. So somebody with ADHD might have that line. Often I see the line that sort of shoots straight over the top of it. That can represent a few things. It can actually be a partial intuition line, like the one I drew down here in the red, partial intuition line, or it can represent an influence line, especially if it touches any of the other lines. So an influence meaning influence from the moon. So someone who has very nurturing, creative, or moody personality. So you look at what all the things that the amount of moon represents. I do have an article on my website about that. There's quite a bit there. The amount of moon has certain personality traits. So someone with this line that crosses over the amount of moon, it's like seeking more of that moon energy. It's possible that they even, during a full moon, their personality tends to get a bit stronger during that time as well, if someone has that. But most of these lines, you have to discuss it with the person. And if we find that that person is quite intuitive, then that means that that is a partial intuition line. If we find that the person is very creative, then it's likely a moon influence line. If we find that the person is hyperactive or has allergies, it could also be an allergy line, but it's just on a different angle. But it's in the same area. It doesn't really matter if it's on a different angle or not. Some palm readers might disagree. They might think, no, that should always be horizontal. But from my experience, that line can be the other way around, on a different angle. Depends on how thick the palm is, whether they have thick skin or or not. So that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of lines there. What else can we add here? Another line you might not be aware of, it's called the loyalty line. From this family line on the thumb, it's a straight line. So it's nothing like the stress lines, which are more frayed looking, but a clean line straight to the lifeline is called the loyalty line. It's quite rare to see that. But that's often represents someone who's loyal to their tribe, their family, their tradition, their generation. And yeah, so I've seen that on some people, and they kind of disagree. They think that that's not what they are. So there may be another family influence. So it represents a strong family influence on that person's life if it reaches the lifeline, for whatever reason there may be. So again, it needs to be one of those lines where you need to discuss it with the person. So any more questions? I've got a couple of minutes left before I end this live stream. If you would like to ask questions, I'm happy to answer. And if you didn't know, I've got many books available. Life and Destiny Palmistry. Character Awareness is my first book. That's in color. So that's a little bit easier to understand. Oh, sorry, the hardcover's not in color. The paperback is in color. Destiny Palmistry 2, the paperback is in color as well. The hardbacks are not, they're made easier to print when they're not in color. Destiny Palmistry 2, that's all the lines in color. I've got a couple of the soft cover, paper cover of the original version with my picture. There's only, I think only like 3 of these left in the world. You want one? I can sign it and send it to you. But otherwise, the new version of that has this cover in the paperback and the hardcover. So that's the latest version. Amazon, or you can go to my website. Check them out there. I've got other books as well. SIMIAN line. I think that's the only SIMIAN line book on the internet that's about the actual palm lines. I found another SIMIAN, but it wasn't. It was a story about some man's life. So it was not a palmistry book. So SIMIAN line conversations. I'll be making another one of those eventually one day when I get a little bit more content. But I'm currently working on a fingerprint book. I've got a mini ebook, Dermatoglyphics. If you want to check out my website, the mini ebook covers basic fingerprints for reading the fingerprints. So I'm going to be expanding on that. Currently working on a whole book on fingerprints. Very interesting subject. So go and check that out. Can an obstacle, horizontal line on the fate line signify a partner, or is it only associated with career challenge obstacles? It can be any obstacle. Yeah, because the fate line is actually not just the career. So let's draw the fate line. That obstacle line can represent money, career, or any obstacle. Often there's a influence line that represents relationship. It is a line that comes in like that. That would represent a marriage. A marriage can also be shown like a line like that, because it's somebody coming into their life and then becoming a supportive partner in their life. If it crosses, then that means that the relationship didn't last. If it is simply a line like that, it can just represent stress. And most people say, yes, it's career or money, but because that fate line can represent any change, any change in life, so it can be yes, relationships as well. And the way you would know is to look at the other lines. So you would look at the heart line. Like, does the heart line have a little stress line dangling from it? What does the marriage line look like up here? Does it have marks on it? Is it nice and smooth? And also sometimes the lifeline, if there's a serious relationship stress like divorce, it can show up like a broken lifeline. Or it can show up as the lifeline reaching out to the fate line. So yes, it can mean many things. So most common it is money related, but not always. Hope that answers your question. So we've got only a couple, some people have dropped, so they lost interest, so I'm going to head off. That's been an hour now, so I shall leave the live stream, and I hope that you'll keep an eye out on my channel and get notified for when I put a new live stream coming up. I'm going to have, hopefully, a week in advance. You should know when my lives are, hopefully. I'll try and put up those videos, upcoming videos for you, so you can see. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope that you'll have a nice night, nice afternoon, or a good morning, and we shall see you next time.